Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network invite you to discover your mission. A brand new in-depth monthly video series featuring engaging Catholic speakers who will challenge you to live your life abundantly. For only $25 a month, you will receive a personal monthly mission, including 3 full-length inspirational talks that build upon a new theme each month. Sign up for the Discover Your Mission tier at patreon.com/patchworkheartministry today.
Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry present Journeys in Faith. Now, here's Andy Santis.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to Journeys in Faith here on this Friday evening on Fiat Ministry Network. Great to be here and to have another incredible guest this week. I have Deanna Bartalini. She is a Catholic writer, speaker, retreat leader, and educator. And we're going to unpack all that she does and learn about her life and learn about her ministry. And so, Deanna, welcome. Thanks for joining me on Journeys in Faith.
Anne, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. There's so much for us to talk about. And I want to say hello to your audience and my audience, because I know they're all here watching and wanting to know a little bit about you, because you're always ministering to others, but maybe you don't have a chance always to talk about your own life and the things that you're doing, all the different facets of your ministry.
Yeah, because there's a lot. There's always a lot. And you don't want it to be all about you, right? Because really the purpose of what we're doing individually and collectively really is to help people become closer to God and to know more about Him and how He moves in the world. But He moves through people, right? He moves, and we are open to that. So that's really, this is an opportunity to talk about some of those ways that we're open to that movement of God in our lives.
Yeah, I love the work that you're doing, because it's really a combination of that spiritual relationship, the relationship that we have with God, and also educating ourselves, like that catechesis piece that's so important too.
Yeah,
it really is.
So it's that's really where my heart has always been, really, because I don't think that we can fully love God unless we know Him and who He is and what He wants for us. So that's
Amen.
really at the heart of what I try to do, with my work.
Yeah, I really love your ministry. And we were a guest on your podcast as well, myself and Bill Snyder, my co-host for our podcast. And then you interviewed me recently for my book.
Yes.
So thank you for having me. I want to read your bio, because it will help for people to get to know you a little bit better. And Deanna G. Bartalini is a Catholic writer, speaker, educator, and retreat leader. She's the founder of the livenotlukewarm.com community. So definitely, if you're watching this and you have your phone there or your laptop, whatever, look it up. livenotlukewarm.com, a place to inform, engage, and inspire your Catholic faith through interactive Bible studies, courses, and book clubs. Her weekly podcast, Not Lukewarm Podcast, love that, gives you tips and tools to live out your faith. Deanna writes for CatholicMom.com and Diocesan.com. You can also find her at DeannaBartalini.com, where she writes about whatever's on her mind at the moment. Links to her website, we can also, look that up. If you go to that website, her own personal website, you will see all those different links. So thank you so much for all your great work. Why don't we start out with, I know that you are a wife and a mother. Your husband happens to be a permanent deacon, so you're both in ministry. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
more about your family and your vocation.
So we've been married almost 38 years, and we have 2 adult children. We have 3 grandchildren. And I have served in church ministry for years. That really has been, after I left teaching, I went into parish ministry. And so I had just finished a master's degree at Loyola. It was an extension program, so we actually did it here, but it was from Loyola University in New Orleans. Anyway, so I'm done with school, and my husband, I forget what job he had at that time, but I was like, oh, we're finally going to be free of the school schedule. Our children had graduated college. I had finished my degree. He was not working in a school. And I was like, great, we can have a free life, do what we want, come and go as we please. And he comes to me and he says, I think God is calling me to become a deacon. And I said, I'm sorry, what? So, but sure enough, that was indeed what God was calling him to do. And as part of the process, wives, and it varies in every diocese. I need to say that up front. The process varies in every diocese. But there is a component always that the wife, if the man is married, has to give her permission. And of course, we have to write a letter in our diocese. We actually have to write a letter, handwritten and hand signed. And so I did this, and then I thought, great, so now we're going to be tied back to the school schedule. Not only did he go back to school to study to become a deacon, but then he started teaching school again. So now we're back tied to a school schedule. So I feel like that's an interesting thing because, as a kid, you're tied to a school schedule, right? Well, here I am no longer a child, and yet we're still tied to the school schedules. So that's kind of interesting in terms of our life. The way our paths have gone, right? I began as a teacher, now he is a teacher. We're both in ministry now, actively involved. And so it's been an interesting journey. It's been a very interesting journey. And of course, seeing our kids grow up and now raising their own children in the faith, that is also just an unbelievable gift to us, that we're close to our kids, we're close to our grandkids. They're little, they're 3, 2, and 1. But we love them. And so far it seems like they like us too. So that's good.
Yeah, I just love when you talk and tell us about your personal journey too, because it's really a wonderful thing when you have a husband and a wife that are both in ministry and both having that heart to serve, and to be a part of what the church is trying to do to make outreach and educate and catechize people. So I just want to thank you so much for the great work that you're doing.
We love it. We just love to be with people. And we love God. And so it's a good fit, right?
Yeah, that's a great fit. Now, on your bio, the first thing that you list as far as what you do is that you are a writer. You mentioned CatholicMom.com. I want to say hello to our friends there. I'm also with Catholic Mom too. And so tell us about the different facets of your writing and other publications or any books or things that you want to tell us about in terms of writing.
I never thought I would like writing so much because I really do prefer to talk, but I do like to write. And so I've written for different websites, but Catholic Mom has been the longest running so far. And I mean, as you know, as someone else who writes for them, it's the audience is so wide ranging, right? There are young moms, and then there are empty nesters like us. I think you're almost an empty nester,
Yes.
right? They still seem to come back though, right? Grandmothers, to men write for them. So everyone, it's a great venue, I think. And then for a long time, I actually wrote for Catechist magazine because, again, catechism, teaching the truth, beauty, and goodness of our faith is how we reach people for Jesus. And so I wrote for Catechist magazine for a long time, for a couple of years, I think 3 or 4 years actually, and they're no longer in publication. So that's why I don't write for them anymore. And I have written a book, a Bible study with Our Sunday Visitor about the fruits of the Holy Spirit, how to live the fruit of the Holy Spirit more fully. That was a big surprise. And that happened actually, through a connection that I made through Catholic Mom. So not saying that I was looking for it, but again, God surprises us all the time. You know, like you may not be thinking, like, I really never thought I would write a book. I liked writing articles and posts and different things like that, but a book, like that's a big deal, right? As you well know,
Yes,
because your
yes.
book has just come out, and you know, it's a labor of love. It really is. And so that was an amazing thing to be able to do. And so with Catholic Mom, the other thing that I love that we do, you know, we do, I love to do Facebook Lives because it's another way to connect with people, which is what this is about, right? It's about making some connections. You know, it's about saying, wow, this person has lived a life, same, you know, struggles, problems, but look, they're faithful. And I can be faithful too. And I can take a little bit of what that person has said and apply it to my own life, you know, and grow it in my own faith that way. So I think that's really beneficial. So that's a lot of the writing I do. I also do weekly, we all do on the Live Not Lukewarm site, we have a Sunday reflection for the gospel, mostly usually for the gospel. And it's either a short audio or I write a written reflection. Because obviously we all go to mass and we listen. But when I try to reflect on the gospels is, I think, what does it say to me in here? So it's not really it's not a mental exercise. It's where does it strike me in my soul? And then what do I do with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, it does require a little bit of work on our part, doesn't it? I mean, it's not just like we read or write or try to learn. We have to actually make it part of who we are and do something about it. And that's what I like about what you're doing and the writing that you're doing too, because it's an invitation. You've done a good job with that. I have to say,
Thank you.
based on what I've seen of your writing and your ministry in general, is that it's an invitation for us to be a part of that universal Catholic Church and part of the community, not only a smaller community, but the whole worldwide, what it means to be Catholic.
Yeah. And when we read the Word of God, we become much more connected to Him. And I think through it with each other, because then we're all on the same page, right? Which we are as Catholics. We read, you know, no matter where you go to mass today, it's the same reading.
Yeah.
You know?
And that brings us together. Because we're all kind of like on that journey with Christ as we read those readings. So I definitely want to make sure that people do check out your website at livenotlukewarm.com. And I know you have your other one, the deannabartalini.com as well. Now, does that lead to the same place, Deanna? Or
no, they're actually two separate websites,
okay,
because I have a very big dream for the Live Not Lukewarm website.
Okay.
Which, so I'll just go ahead and tell you my dream.
Please do.
And who knows, people listening might say, hey, I need to connect with this person. I don't want that website to be my website and my husband's website. I want it to be a place eventually that many different people who want to teach something, who want to write, who want to share their work that they're doing, that it would be a place for many different voices, not just my own. I really do envision it becoming a hub, you know, a place for many different voices of people who want to teach about the faith, who are faithful to what our church teaches, and want to teach it in such a way that they make connections with people. You know, there are lots and lots of great places to get lots of excellent information that's, you know, theologically correct and in line with the magisterium and all of that. And those are great places, but they don't often encourage you to have a conversation. You know, so
it's got to be interactive. It's got to be alive, right? It's not just information that you know, because you have to do something about it. So no, I love that. I think that's great. So do check out, again, to everybody watching, livenotlukewarm.com. And I really love your ministry. I mean that. I do.
I appreciate that.
You're doing wonderful work. And it's really very personal in a good way, meaning that you're trying to bring people together. people of faith and to teach them, what the church really does teach and not what we think it teaches. So I think that's yeah, it's amazing. Let's move on, if we could, to the fact that you're a Catholic speaker as well. Tell us about that, and what kinds of things do you speak about? Do you do online presentations or in person? I'm sure maybe you do both.
Well, obviously, the last year or so,
Yeah.
it's all been online, and so I've done really spoken with like women's groups, and for a time, I was also working as a retreat leader, doing that on site, which that's not happening right now. But really, the speaking, again, it's one of those things that I think I've always been a person who, to get up and talk to people was fine, but it was always in a very, in late with my job. I would talk to parents, I would talk to kids, and teaching them and that sort of thing. So when the speaking started, it really amazed me because, again, it was just another way to connect with people. And so a couple of the topics that I really love to talk about are prayer and how to have a prayer life, because I have found in all of my years dealing with people that a lot of times people's prayer lives are very one-sided. This is not a criticism. I think this is what we were taught. I recall being taught this. Well, prayer is talking to God. No one ever mentions I should stop and listen to him. So
Yeah, no,
prayer is
exactly. It's a great point.
Yeah,
it really is.
And people don't always think about it. So prayer is something that I enjoy, speaking about. I love Ignatian spirituality because I think Ignatius has a lot to teach us. I mean, all the saints have many things to teach us, but in particular, he was very practical, which I find reassuring. And so I've spoken about that. I was part of the Catholic Mom Summit back in November, and I tried to give a little perspective to younger moms, that idea that our children don't belong to us. They're gifts from God. And as such, sometimes we have to learn to not hold on to them too tightly, and when it's time to let go, right?
Yes, that's great advice for mothers because, a lot of things in our life, in the secular world, there's a lot of that sort of ownership. I go to the store, I buy my food, I have my house, I have my clothing, but children are, it's different. And they're a gift from God, as you said, and they don't belong to us. So I know that's kind of maybe a funny way of saying it, but they're not our ownership, as you said.
Right. And the other thing that I love to talk about and I love to participate in is Unbound Prayer Ministry. And I'm actually going to be speaking this weekend. Pink Salt Riot is having a Mission of Joy conference. And I am just bowled over by the fact that I am going to be able to speak on this platform with Jill Simmons and talk about the Unbound Healing and Deliverance Ministry, because people need that inner healing. They need and they desire to be whole. And so that Unbound Prayer Ministry provides that. Obviously, that's not necessarily going to happen in a virtual talk. You still need that one-on-one prayer with people, but introduce it to people. So those are just some of the other things. And a lot of women's groups like to have conversations and talks about the Blessed Mother. How do I relate to Mary? How do I relate to Mary? Because she is so perfect. And I think we forget that, yes, she was sinless, but we forget that she still had to do all the things to raise a family and to take care of Jesus and Joseph and deliver life like we do. Only she had to wash diapers without a washing machine. So all of that. So how can we relate to Mary as well?
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, if I could just backtrack a little bit, you mentioned the Unbound,
Yes.
I'm from the greater Philadelphia area. And about 15 years ago, my husband and I met Neil Lozano, who's the author of the book and the founder. And we had an opportunity, I think it was back in 2002 or something, that my husband and I, so maybe it was more than 15 years ago, we went through the whole training about Unbound, and we're praying with people. And, that whole idea that, there's always something that's holding us back. And a lot of times it could be sin, and it could also be just something within our spirit, some kind of vice that we need to release, right? That we need to release. And so it's an interesting thing. And it has helped my life so much, and my husband's, and just being educated in that way and being able to share it. And it's great to see how big the ministry has become. When he first started out, it was pretty much just where I live, like the greater Philadelphia area, the suburbs, and some communities that are close to the city, but it really has expanded all over the United States and even all over the world. So
Yes.
it's just an
Yes.
incredible thing, and
Yeah.
great to
We,
hear.
Well, and it's interesting. So that's definitely a common thing that we share, because my husband and I also trained prayer ministers. And I think that's really important. That's not something that you should undertake lightly. It's not like, oh, I can read the book and do this with people. I'm
Right.
a big believer in education, of course, but especially in that case, right?
Exactly.
Because you're dealing with people's souls.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for sharing on that. And I would just encourage for people to check out that book too, Unbound. Just go
Oh
to
my
Amazon
gosh.
and look it up, Unbound by Neil Lozano. And then you mentioned the Blessed Mother. And I think that's so important for us as mothers also to realize that she is our mother. She's also everyone's mother, who's caring and watching over all of us. And we can relate to her, as you said. I mean, there's so many ways that we can relate to her, even though she was sinless. She still had to, as you said, raise a family and do a lot of the things that we do. And maybe, of course, it was even harder back then because we have some of these modern conveniences that make life a little bit easier, so to speak, right? So, yes. But so far, I think this show, you have shared so much, and we have a lot more to talk about. Unfortunately, we do have to take a short break. So please do continue to watch. We'll be right here on Journeys in Faith with Deanna Bartalini. See you in a few. Hi, my name is Ann DeSantis, and I'm the director for the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. You can learn about us on our website at nonatus.org. I'm here to tell you today about two great podcasts that I hope that you will tune in. The first Tuesday of every month at 8 o'clock, we have a podcast specifically for Catholics affected by divorce. From 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, go to Philly Nonatus on YouTube to subscribe. In addition, we also have a podcast the last Thursday of every month. That's also at 8 o'clock Eastern Time for 1 hour. And that one is for families in crisis. We have some really great guests coming up soon, so hope to see you then. Please also consider the fact that you can make spiritual direction appointments with us, with our spiritual moderator. All you need to do is go to our website on the contact form and just reach out to us. We'd be happy to hear from you and look forward to setting up an appointment. So we'd love to connect with you. Please share this video and let people know that we're there for families affected by divorce and also families in crisis. Thank you.
Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network present the Discover Your Mission series.
Now, I had been brought up without any prayer, without Bible, without church, nothing of that kind. And so when my father died, I became suicidally depressed. I had no desire to live. And yet, by the grace of God, whenever I got to the point of actually taking my life, I always had this interior conviction that if I took my life, I would simply find it again on the other side, and it would be permanent misery.
But it wasn't until I became a wife and a mother, and I began to try and pass my faith on to my children, that I realized that everything I knew about Jesus was memorized doctrine.
I was a good man, I was a good father, I was instilling the sacraments into my family. I was definitely not intentional. I was stuck roped to my faith.
But what kind of strength did he have? Jackie did not just have a strength of body or baseball skill. He had a strength inside of his spirit, a courageous meekness that empowered him to play the game.
And I tell him what is going on with me, and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no, I think this is like some sort of miracle, dude. And he's like, okay, of course, but I'll believe it when I see it. Honey, you've been trying to quit, and you've been saying this and saying that, and I'm his big line to me is, you shouldn't say things, because I never follow through on them. And so this was week after week, month after month. He is looking at me like, this is a miracle. There is no way that you, on your own, could have done this.
So we are called to sing. All of us are called to sing. All of us are called to express ourselves and join our voice into the unity of the church. Often with my choirs, I ask them to listen to each other, to listen to the sound that they make together as one. That's what we're aiming for. Through the harmony or unison, we're aiming for a one sound.
You need to decide, what are you going to participate in? Are you going to participate in the historic Christian idea of the altar of sacrifice, which is in the Eucharist, or not?
Welcome back to Journeys in Faith after the commercial break. Thank you so much for joining us with my amazing guest, Deanna Bartalini. And as I said, she is an author, a speaker, a retreat leader, and an educator. And during the first half of the show, Deanna was talking about her vocation and also a little bit about her family and her writing and her speaking engagements as well. So Deanna, I'll just pick up with you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share in terms of the writing and the speaking that you do to our audience?
I just, in everything that I do, my goal always is to leave people with some practical tip. I don't like to use the word tip because this is about our faith, but how to practically apply what we know to be true and good in our everyday lives. Our faith is not something we take on and off like, I would say a winter coat, but I never wear a winter coat. I live in Florida. It's not something you take on and off like your baseball cap. It's part of who you are all the time. And that's really how I want to live and how I want to help people.
Yes, and I think you do that very well. And another facet of who you are is that you are an educator and a catechist. And I wondered if you can share a little bit about that experience, what it's like, and exactly what you do to educate, because I know you have a great community there that people can learn about.
So, for many, many years, I was a director of religious education in a couple of different parishes, and I enjoyed that. But it has its limitations. And with that, I also worked with the RCIA program, where adults who are converting to Catholicism or completing their sacraments, as well as doing different adult studies. And so the more I thought about it, I really started to think, what stops people sometimes from participating in programs, for want of a better word? And I think time constraints is one of it. I also think that the how difficult it is to get to things, right? So in Florida, for example, we have a lot of elderly people, and driving at night is difficult for them because they just don't have good vision at night. And so I thought, how could it wasn't so much a desire to reach more people, but to reach people where they were, right? And then the pandemic struck. So then it just became sort of like I was doing what everybody else was doing, even though I had sort of started ahead of time. But nonetheless, the whole point of it is, how do we love someone who we don't know? How can we love someone whom we don't know? We really can't. And one of my favorite saints is Catherine of Siena. And Catherine of Siena has this quote that says that love of God follows knowledge of God. So we want to know who God is. And not only who God is, but who are we in relation to God? And so when I think about catechizing, which is just a fancy, it's the Catholic word of saying educating people, right? Only in regard to the faith. How do we do that? It's first, we can appeal to the beauty of Catholicism to draw people in that way, or through goodness. So they see the good in other people, the good in the saints, in the outreach the church does, all of that. And then we have the truth. But people are not going to believe the truth you teach unless you are authentic.
Yes, that's
And so,
important.
yeah, I mean, Pope Francis, that has been since the beginning of his papacy, one of the things that he has called all of us in terms of evangelization is to that authenticity. And so I think that is huge. And I think making connections with people is one way that you can become an authentic witness, and then other people then become authentic witnesses, and it spreads.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I do think that we're not alone. I mean, we're not islands. We're not meant to just go into a room and pray and not do anything about it, right? And as much as our families are really the first place, that's the domestic church. We need to minister to one another in our homes. But I do think we have to go out beyond that. Sometimes that you see that in the Catholic world, that we get very focused on our own kids and their school and their colleges and the different things that are going on in our own family's life. And we can get kind of overwhelmed with all those facets. And so I think when we get involved in something like what you're doing and getting beyond the walls of just our own home, right, and caring about what's going on around us, even if it's in our extended family or in your church community, right, you can make a difference, because then it's going beyond just the boundary of just your own life, right, and the people that
Yes.
are just naturally around you. It makes it more of a larger, community, bringing people in. So I think that's an awesome thing. Now, tell us a little bit more about in terms of the educating. I would also put that podcasting that you do as well in that category. Tell us a little bit more about that too.
So the podcast, really, I was struggling with coming up together, making it come together. And I really liked the idea of a podcast, but again, I was struggling with putting it together. And I was at a conference, a women's conference, Magnificat, and I was at a conference and I met this woman from the west coast of Florida. And she says, "You have a podcast?" And we hit it off. We really clicked. And she said, "I have a platform and I'm looking for new podcasters." And so because of that opportunity, and she helped me and taught me how to put this all together, I was able to start this podcast. So it's the Not Lukewarm podcast. And again, so where's we keep saying live not lukewarm, not lukewarm, not lukewarm. Where the heck does this come from, right?
Yes, tell
It's not
us.
something I made up, right? It's Revelation 3:16. Jesus is speaking to the churches, and he says to them, "You are neither hot nor cold, you are lukewarm, and so I will spit you out of my mouth." And I remember very, very many years ago reading that, thinking, I never want to be spit out of Jesus's mouth, because that just doesn't seem like a good thing to happen. And so to live not lukewarm is really to fully embrace everything that God has done for you, given to you as your gifts, your talents. And then how do we go out and share it with the world? And again, it is not super complicated. We often complicate things. So how do we live not lukewarm? Well, you know what? Maybe it's your husband always takes out the trash. Maybe you surprise him by taking it out one morning. That probably won't happen in my house, but I will take out the recycle. I'll bring the trash can in though. I won't take the trash out. It's how do you live not lukewarm? And so again, it goes back to, if you don't know what the church believes, how can you embrace what the church believes? And so the podcast is relatively short. So, and then at the end of every podcast, I always leave, which you know because you've been on a few times, a challenge, something to do for the week to live more fully in your faith. And it is never complicated. It never costs money. It is an investment of time, energy, in saying that I want to make, maybe I need to make my life better, or maybe I need to make your life better, maybe I need to make the stranger down the street's life better, but just to really spread the good news wherever you are. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I think, I remember our conversation about your book in particular, caring for the poor and marginalized. Well, who are those people? We always think they're over there somewhere. They're not. They're really not.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's true. I mean, because we tend to think of homelessness or people who are rejected by society for whatever reason. And of course, they are marginalized, and we always want to pray for them. But there could be people in our churches, there's people in our own houses or in our neighborhoods that feel not supported. To me, I would give the definition to me of marginalized. One of the definitions to me is people who do not have the love and support that they deserve. And there's a lot of people who fall into that category. I mean, and really, I think there's even people who are very devoted to their faith and even in ministry sometimes who do not have the love and support that they deserve. So that's thanks for bringing that up, because I do think that's a way that you are helping to live out being not lukewarm, right?
Right. It's the idea that, and then also that whole idea of living not lukewarm is to say, okay, I don't give God a part of myself. I give him all of it. Now, some days that's harder than others, and I'm not perfect, please, by no means. But
none of us, right?
Right. None of us are, but it's all tied together, right? Even when I think about unbound prayer, think about how tied unbound prayer is to not only serving the marginalized, but helping people who do not feel that they are worthy to know that they are worthy because they are created by God. So sometimes I think that all the work I do is very disparate and not connected. But then literally, as I'm having this conversation with you, I realize, no, it is all connected, because it is all focused with the same thought in mind, is that what has God given me, and how can I give what he has given me to you? Because we're not meant to keep it for ourselves.
Amen. Yeah, we're meant to give that love, really, the charity, the love, and not the vice, but the virtue, right? So that's what we're trying to do is minimize the virtue, right? And maximize that, the vice, minimize the vice and maximize the virtue in our lives, especially the charity and the love. So yeah, I think that's a great thing.
And God's mercy, his mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all goes together.
Right. Maximize virtue, minimize vice.
Exactly.
That could be a good tagline for something.
It really is. Yeah, I don't know how I thought of that one, but I think it's because if you think about it, at least while we're on earth, there will still be sin, right? Until the end, there will still be sin. So we say to minimize the vice, because, we may not completely get rid of that as we're here, but we try our best to live that life as close to God and as close to his virtue. And I think the sacramental life also, and all that you're doing, the kinds of work that you're doing to helping people to get closer to God. Let's also talk about the fact that you're a retreat leader too. Tell us more about that.
So that's, again, that's something that for years on and off, I would always do retreats for, the catechists, for team members, because I do believe that ministers in our church need to be cared for. Their cup needs to be filled. They can't always be the one, oh, Mrs. Bartalini, can you help me? Mrs. DeSantis, can you help me? Can you help? Yes, we want to help, and we want to serve the people in our parishes and so forth. So that was one thing. And then when I wrote for Catechist Magazine, I wrote a lot of retreats for DREs to do with their catechists or with children and teens. Then you just find yourself in this position where people are in need. And so my husband and I did for Lent, we did a very nice virtual retreat because it's still pandemic time. And again, it's just that idea of setting apart some time just to devote yourself to prayer, to contemplation, if you can, receiving the sacraments. And it doesn't have to be weeks. It can be a couple of hours where you just put aside the cares of the world and focus on your relationship with God. We talk about how spouses should go out on dates, right? And people also advise you, if you have children, if you have more than one child, to take one child out, to have some special quality time with one child at a time and so forth. Well, how much more do we need that time with God?
Oh, absolutely.
How much more, right?
Mhm.
And so always when I focus on retreats, in terms of like being a presenter and so forth, always want to have access as much as possible for people to have access to the sacraments. So to always have it in that kind of a setting where priests are available. You start with Mass, probably, hopefully, depending on the length of time, availability of confession, and that is what draws us closer to Him. And then through that, we can get closer to other people and really be able to live how God wants us to live, not in
Yes.
isolation.
That's right. That's right. And it's good to hear that that you're doing things like this. Now, if somebody's watching, they're a member of a church community or an organization or something, tell us, what kinds of things could you do for them? Are you still doing those online opportunities as well? Or now are you going out and trying to get some events scheduled with a live event? Okay.
Yeah, both. Because, it's been an interesting year, right? 15 months, whatever it's been. I think for some organizations, obviously local organizations, live is not a problem because, it's easy to travel. But things that are not within my local area, sometimes people don't have the financial wherewithal to have you go. So virtual is definitely an option. I'm comfortable talking. You just can't see me talking as much with my hands. You just see it a little bit, right? But yes, I'm very much open to virtual or live events. Live events, look, this is great. And we've talked so many times. I feel like if I were in Philly, I'd say, like, I'd call and like, Ann, can we meet for coffee?
Yeah,
Because I do
same
feel
here.
like I would do that, right? But there's nothing that beats being physically present to each other. And so I'm definitely looking at doing some live events. I actually have something scheduled for July within the diocese. And then I'll be looking in the winter. I think I'm going to the west coast of Florida. I always have to qualify when I don't want to just say the West Coast as in California. It's the West Coast of Florida. It's a drive. And so, yes, open to in-person, open to virtual. The best way is to just go to either of my websites and there's a contact form on there and just shoot me an email and, we can have a conversation.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it sounds awesome because this is the time. Now that people are finally starting to get back. And I know here in Pennsylvania, we still have the distancing in church, but a lot of people, are not wearing the masks, I guess, because the vaccination levels have gone up so much that, but our archdiocese did not lift up that dispensation yet. But I'm guessing that it's going to be pretty soon. It's going to be probably within the next few months or something like that.
Yeah,
so as
yeah.
that happens and people are getting together more, it'd be a perfect time to invite you to come to their church and do a talk. So I think that's amazing. I thought we could end, if we could, let's talk a little bit also about getting back to Mass. And could you offer any encouragement? Because there are people who are watching who, believe it or not, just felt kind of, scared to get back even to this point, meaning that even if their churches are open, they're offering Mass, they still want to wait maybe until the pandemic is completely done. Or maybe they have some health problems or something. So would you have any words to say to those people who haven't quite gotten back yet?
So I think there's two I'm going to say two sets of people in the situation. There might be more. There are people who, for health reasons, have concerns. And so one of the things that you could consider, and again, because every diocese that I have seen that has lifted the dispensation has also said, if for health reasons you do not feel safe because it puts a risk to your personal health, then we understand, right? But one thing that might be helpful is to go to a daily mass, because typically they're not as crowded as a
Yes.
Sunday. So go to a daily mass, excuse me. And if you feel you want to wear your mask, wear your mask. Go ahead and do that. I mean, I know that we've had many people in our lives have gone through chemotherapy, and they want to continue going to church, but the germ factor for when you're undergoing chemo is very high, right? You need to be very careful with that. So they would wear a mask. So, but just take some small steps, and even if you go to a Sunday mass, say to the usher, listen, I want to sit kind of by myself. Is it okay if I just go sit over here and you don't let anybody sit next to me? Be honest with what you need and let people know. So if there's a health concern, those are some things you might consider. Now, if you're afraid, just in general, think about this. Are you going and doing other activities? If you're going and doing other activities and getting on with the business of normal, ordinary life, then I think we have to trust that God is going to care for us. And you still need to be prudent. I'm not suggesting that you go to mass and start hugging and kissing everyone. I'm not saying that. In some places, they're still not putting holy water back, and they're not allowing the sign of peace. Do what seems prudent and reasonable, but take the steps to move forward. Because if we live in fear, then we are allowing the evil one to win. And Jesus has promised us victory. He has promised us he's given us our salvation. And so take a deep breath and go back to church, because what's at mass that you need that you don't get virtually? It's literally Jesus in the Eucharist.
Amen. Yeah.
How do you survive without Jesus in the Eucharist?
Yeah, well said, because these are things, like you said, there's two categories. And I think what you're trying to say is that there's people who are really just afraid because they do have some kind of health problem or something, and they don't really want to go back right away. But I do think also there could be people that they've just gotten used to it. They've gotten used to watching it on TV, or maybe not even watching it, and kind of going about their daily lives, but not really getting back to mass. So I think that there's some good points. You said the Eucharist, that's the food for our soul. We do need that. So I think that's a good encouragement for people who are on the fence, right? They're on the fence during this time. Now, unfortunately, we're almost out of time on this show, but I do want to make that invitation for all of you who are watching to connect with Deanna Bartalini. She's also on all the social media platforms. If you go to the Live Not Lukewarm, Live Not Lukewarm, and that would be on Instagram and Facebook. And I believe you're on Twitter as well.
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, a little bit on Twitter too, but you definitely want to check out the livenotlukewarm.com website and also deannabartalini.com. So it's been an honor to have you on this show. I would love you to come back again.
Yes, I always enjoy talking with you. And this whole lockdown has brought some really wonderful people into my life, and I count you as one of them. And I
Same
always
here.
think, wow, someday I'm going to get to actually see people in person, and that will be great. So, but yes, I love talking with you, and I'm glad I had this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Deanna. You were really an amazing guest. And I really mean it when I say this to people who are watching, is Deanna is somebody that you want to connect with. She is someone that you want to follow and also get to know what she's doing. I mean, her ministry really is helping people, could help you, your family, to get closer to Christ and live out your faith better. So again, thank you so much, Deanna.
Thank you. Everybody have a great day.
And we'll see all of you here on Journeys in Faith next Friday. God bless.
Journeys of Faith is a production of Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry. For more information about Journeys of Faith, email info@fiatministrynetwork.tv. And be sure to friend, follow, and like us on social media. Just search Journeys in Faith with Ann DeSantis.